Being faster than your opponent is usually a good thing in Pokemon. The turn order in battle is primarily decided by speed stats, and the fastest Pokemon get to move first. But that isn't always ideal. What's up, fellas? I'm Matt, and today Elias and I are going to talk about the benefits of being slower. Alright, let's get started.
What's up? I'm Elias, and the most common reason you might want to be slower than your opponent is the move Trick Room. It's a -7 priority move that reverses the speed order for 5 turns. That means the slowest Pokemon moves first while Trick Room is up. I mean, Regieleki can become so fast that it glitches the game and ignores Trick Room entirely, but that's another can of worms, and we don't have any time for that today. Trick Room strategies are more common in doubles compared to singles, and that's for a couple of reasons. For starters, double battles are typically much shorter than single battles. That's especially true if you're playing the official doubles format VGC, where you only choose 4 Pokemon for each battle. 5 turns of Trick Room is plenty of time to get substantial mileage out of the move in doubles, but in singles that isn't really the case.
Single battles tend to last a lot longer than double battles. You can make a lot of progress with Trick Room in doubles, but 5 turns isn't that long in singles. And to make things even worse, the Pokemon that can learn Trick Room aren't the best Pokemon to take advantage of it. So you have to spend 1 turn setting up Trick Room, then usually another turn switching to another Pokemon. By this point, you only have 3 turns left because you have to spend so much time setting up. 3 turns of Trick Room is a lot more manageable for your opponent, so this move is rare in singles. Ursaluna proved to be a strong Trick Room attacker when it was released in Scarlet and Violet. Its ability Guts combined with a held Flame Orb, moves like Swords Dance, Headlong Rush, and Facade, and Terrestrialization made it incredibly strong. It's also a bulky Pokemon on the physical side, thanks to its 130 base HP and 105 defense. But Ursaluna eventually fell out of favor in the standard competitive tier OU. Trick Room can work in singles, but it's a lot more finicky compared to doubles. In a double battle, you can have a Trick Room setter and an offensive Pokemon on your side at the same time. That means you don't have to spend time switching your Trick Room setter out. Combine that with the fact that double battles don't last as long, and you've got an environment where Trick Room can thrive.
One thing that Speed Snacks,
my favorite.
One thing that Speed Stats sneakily affect is abilities. I hate you, man.
Love you too, man.
If 2 Pokemon enter the battle at the same time, and they both have abilities that take effect upon switching in, they'll activate in speed order. For example, Zacian is faster than Incineroar, so Zacian's ability Intrepid Sword will raise its attack first, then Incineroar's Intimidate will lower the opponent's attack. Usually the order doesn't make a difference, but sometimes you'll want your Pokemon to be slower so that your ability activates last. If your team is built around a specific weather ability, for example, then you're not going to want your opponent setting up a different weather. Let's say I have a team based around Tyranitar's Sandstream. Tyranitar has a base speed stat of 61, which is reasonably slow. But if my opponent brings a snow team with a snow warning Abomasnow, then I might be in trouble. Abomasnow has an even slower base speed stat of 60.
Hey, Elias, could you beat a Tyranitar in a foot race?
You probably, yeah.
Okay, how fast is a Godzilla?
How fast is a Godzilla?
Let's say both of us send out our weather setters first. We'll assume both Pokemon have the same amount of Speed EVs and IVs, as well as a nature that doesn't affect speed. In this case, the sand will go up first, followed by snow, because Tyranitar is going to be faster. Since Snow Warning takes effect last, it overwrites the sand, meaning the snow will ultimately stay active. If I want the sand to stay up, I would have to make Tyranitar slower somehow. I could give it a speed-lowering nature, or maybe even bring a Tyranitar with a lower level, depending on the rules I'm playing with. Otherwise, I'd have to switch Tyranitar out and bring back in later to put my sand up. I mean, I could teach it the move Sandstorm, but no thanks. This type of interaction makes a difference in competitive play as well. Groudon and Kyogre were some of the first Pokemon to get weather abilities back in Gen 3. Groudon got Drought to set up the sun, and Kyogre got Drizzle to set up rain. Both Pokemon are tied with a base speed stat of 90, so in certain metagames, it's beneficial to find creative ways to be slower than the other to make sure you get the weather you want.
In Generation 7, Kyogre would sometimes hold an Iron Ball in VGC. This item grounds flying types and Pokemon with the ability Levitate, making them vulnerable to ground type moves. But more importantly for today, the Iron Ball also cuts the holder's speed in half. That means if one player leads with a standard Groudon and the other player leads with an Iron Ball Kyogre, Drizzle will always activate last because Kyogre is slower. Getting the right weather up to start the battle is an important advantage, especially in doubles where the games don't last long.
Bulk Up is a pretty solid boosting move. It raises the user's attack and defense stats by 1 stage each, so it's essentially a physical version of Calm Mind. Plenty of bulky physical attackers appreciate this move, like Annihilate and Conkeldurr. One move that's similar to Bulk Up is Curse, Asterisk. Curse gives you the same attack and defense boosts, but it also lowers your speed by 1 stage as long as you're not a Ghost type. If you are a Ghost type, the move does a bunch of other nonsense. You lose half your max health to put a curse on your opponent, which will cause them to lose a quarter of their max XP each turn until they switch out. That version of the move has limited applications, but we don't have time for that right now. Today we're only concerned with the non-Ghost type version.
Some non-Ghost types can learn Curse, but not Bulk Up. So if you want to boost their stats, you might want to consider teaching them Curse. That's especially the case if the Pokemon you're using is slow to begin with. Snorlax has a base speed stat of 30, and Dondozo's is 35. Since they're already really slow, they're not concerned with moving first. That means the speed drop from Curse doesn't really make a difference. It's effectively the same move as Bulk Up for slow Pokemon. Being slow gives you more moveset options in this case. On the other hand, most fast Pokemon won't want to use Curse because you'd be losing a lot more speed advantages. Curse is a universal TM in Generation 2, so it can also be helpful in solo runs. Scott's Thoughts often uses Curse for the final battle against Red and Pokemon Crystal alongside two other universal TMs, Rest and Return. Physical moves like Return are usually best for beating Red because the Snorlax is really bulky on the special side. It can also use Amnesia to boost its special defense into the stratosphere. Curse boosted Return is a good solution for most Pokemon since Return is a physical move. Being able to break through Snorlax is more important than outspeeding Red's other Pokemon, but we're getting a little off track here.
U-turn, Volt Switch, and Flip Turn are some of the best moves in the game. They're not the strongest attacking moves out there, but they switch the user out when they hit. That's a pretty big deal for about a million reasons, but today we're focusing on using them on slow Pokemon. Let's say I want to get a frail Pokemon like Zoroark onto the battlefield. If I just switch it in normally, that switch happens before my opponent moves for the turn. So chances are my guy Zoroark will have to take a hit before it can attack. If I have a fast Pokemon with U-turn like Talonflame on the field, I run into a similar problem. Talonflame outspeeds most Pokemon, so the turn will likely go something like this. Talonflame U-turns, switches out to Zoroark, then the opponent uses their move. Zoroark is still at risk of getting hit, and taking big damage before it can move itself.
In this case, you'd rather use a slower U-turn Pokemon like Scizor. If your U-turn user is slower than your opponent, their attack will hit the first Pokemon instead of Zoroark. That allows you to get your frail Pokemon into the battle more safely. Fast pivoting moves have their own merits, of course, but this isn't the video about the benefits of being faster. That'd be a terrible video.
Good morning, fellas, and welcome back to MEPlaysGames. My name is Matt, and today we're talking about the benefits of being faster. You move first, that's usually good. The end.
Aside from attacks like U-turn and Volt Switch, there are a few other moves that switch out the user. As an example, Slowking's signature move Chilly Reception switches you out and sets up snow on the battlefield. The fact that Slowking is, well, you know, slow, works to its benefit here. That means it can use Chilly Reception to switch out at the end of a turn instead of the beginning, allowing its less bulky teammates to come into battle safely. Both forms of Slowking have seen success with this move competitively. There are a handful of other moves that switch you out, but let's move on to other stuff for today.
You know, I find it funny that this is a video about being slow, and I always get comments about talking too fast. Am I even legally allowed to do this video?
No.
Oh.
You've been arrested 3 times.
Ah, crap. This next example is pretty specific. In fact, it only applies to a single Pokemon, Aegislash. It's got a bulkier Shield form and a stronger Blade form. Shield form has base 150 defense and special defense, and Blade form has 150 attack and special attack. Thanks to its ability Stance Change, it switches to Shield form whenever it uses King Shield, and it switches to Blade form anytime it attacks. Thanks to how Stance Change works, Aegislash is quite happy with its low base speed stat of 60. Since it's so slow, it can reap the benefits of both its forms on the same turn. If you use King Shield on one turn, Aegislash stays in Shield form at the start of the next turn. Since it's a slow Pokemon, its opponent will likely attack first on that second turn. Aegislash will defend against hit in Shield form, then it'll switch to Blade form on the same turn, swapping its stats around its head like a truck as well.
Thanks to how Stance Change works, Aegislash's attack, defense, special attack, and special defense were effectively 150 nearly all the time, which is incredible. Combine that with 60 HP and 60 speed, and Aegislash's base stat total was effectively 720. That base stat total is on par with Arceus. Even after being nerfed in Gen 8, base stats of 140 are nothing to sneeze at, and neither is an effective stat total of 680. If Aegislash were fast, it would be quite a bit less bulky because it would have fewer chances to rely on the Shield form's high defensive stats. You'd mostly be using the Blade form, which is pretty frail to put it nicely. It wouldn't necessarily be bad, but it would play completely differently. Aegislash being slow made it an incredibly threatening Pokemon, and it did so in a pretty unique way.
You know what? That actually segues quite nicely into the next point I want to talk about. Gyro Ball is a Steel-type move, and Aegislash just happens to be able to learn it. This move gets stronger the slower the user is compared to the target. If the user is 5.96 times slower than the target, Gyro Ball maxes out at 150 power. Aegislash is one of the slowest Pokemon around, especially in Gen 6 and 7 where it was banned to Ubers. Its low speed stat meant Gyro Ball would usually do big damage, since legendary Pokemon and the like tend to have high speed stats. A lot of these Pokemon will also make themselves even faster by investing in speed EVs, making the speed difference even more pronounced. A level 100 Aegislash's speed stat can get as low as 112, so most Pokemon in Ubers run circles around it, but thanks to Gyro Ball and Stance Change, that's actually a good thing. For more videos like this, subscribe to MEPlaysGames, and consider becoming a channel member. We've also got a Discord server, linked in the description. Come hang out with us. Smile.
Another move that's best used with slow Pokemon is Perish Song, which is apparently a normal type move, by the way. That's the kind of thing that feels like it should probably be ghost type, but I digress. Upon using Perish Song, every Pokemon on the field will faint in 3 turns unless they switch out. But if you use the move at the very end of the battle when neither player has any Pokemon in the back to switch to. That's when speed stats come into play.
The same way the turn order is decided based on speed stats, the order in which Pokemon faint from Perish Song is also determined by their speed. The slowest Pokemon will faint last, so if the battle ends with the Perish count dropping to 0, the winner of the battle is whoever has the slowest Pokemon. So if you use Perish Song to end a battle, you'd better make sure to have a slow Pokemon on the field to secure a victory. Matt sent out level 1 Kricketot.
Level 1 Seal.
Level 1 Seal. That's my guy.
Being slower than your opponent can also be the difference between life and death in other ways. For example, if somebody is chasing you with a knife, you better hope that you're faster than them. You can cut that.
I'm not.
Close Combat is one of the best fighting type moves in the game. It's 120 power and 100 accuracy, but it has one notable drawback. It lowers the user's defense and special defense by 1 stage apiece. The timing of the defense drops can potentially allow you to survive a hit that would otherwise knock you out, and vice versa. If you use Close Combat and you're faster than your opponent, your defensive stats will drop before they attack for the turn, causing you to take more damage. Let's illustrate this point with an example. Let's say a Beartick with 199 speed is going up against a Metagross with 200 speed. We'll assume both Pokemon have maxed out attack, EVs, and IVs, as well as an attack boosting nature. On turn 1, Metagross moves first and goes for Heavy Slam. Assuming it doesn't get a critical hit, Beartick will survive this hit, allowing it to fire off a Close Combat. At this point, Beartick will be pretty beaten up, but you have the option to switch out and then have it come back into battle later.
Cool. So what happens if Metagross has 198 speed instead? Well, this time Beartick gets faster by 1 point, so it moves first, and Close Combat will drop its defenses before Metagross attacks. Metagross will always survive this hit, whether Beartick gets a crit or not. This time, Heavy Slam is guaranteed to want to KO Beartick, since Beartick's -1 defense makes the move do 50% more damage. Since Beartick is fainted, you don't have the options to use it later. In this context, you're better off if your Pokemon is slower, because Beartick took less damage in this case. Close Combat also has a handful of clones, so the same idea also applies to stuff like Headlong Rush, Armor Cannon, and Dragon Ascent, and the same goes for any other move that lowers your defensive stats. If your opponent's in KO range, you're better off being faster and just taking them out, but in some scenarios, you're better off being slower because it'll take less damage. The last thing we wanted to talk about today is Analytic. If the Analytic user is the last Pokemon to move for the turn, their move will be 30% stronger, so this ability typically rewards you for being the slowest Pokemon on the field. Beheeyem has a base speed stat of 40, meaning it'll usually get Analytic boost when it attacks. It can boost the move Psychic with the same type attack bonus, Analytic, and by holding a pair of Choice Specs or a Life Orb to do a ton of damage. There's one thing worth noting about this ability though. If your opponent switches out in a single battle and you go for an attack, Analytic will boost your move since switching goes first. So Starmie can take advantage of Analytic despite being pretty fast, since it lets you punish opponents for switching. That's nice, but it is a bit of a tangent.
Oh, I see. It's my turn and it's the end of the video. Alright, bye.